The morning sun cast long shadows across the remote Afghan village as Lieutenant Sarah Chen finished her medical rounds at the temporary field clinic. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders after 18 straight hours of treating wounded civilians and coalition forces. The small medical tent, barely large enough for 3 patients, had become her second home over the past 6 months. Sarah had volunteered for this deployment against her family's wishes. As one of the Navy's top combat medics, she felt a deep responsibility to serve where she was needed most. The village of Khost had been relatively quiet lately, but intelligence reports suggested Taliban forces were regrouping in the surrounding mountains. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez watched from a distance as Sarah finally allowed herself a moment of rest. The hardened SEAL team leader had been operating in this region for 3 weeks, conducting reconnaissance missions and building relationships with local tribal leaders. His weathered face bore the marks of countless deployments, but his sharp eyes never missed a detail. Marcus had first noticed Sarah 2 days earlier, when his team brought in a wounded Afghan child who had stepped on an unexploded ordnance. While other medical personnel hesitated due to the severity of the injuries, Sarah immediately took charge. Her steady hands and calm demeanor under pressure had impressed the seasoned warrior. She worked for 6 hours straight, ultimately saving the boy's life. The village elder, Mahmoud, approached Marcus with obvious concern etched across his weathered features. The old man spoke in hushed Pashto, glancing nervously toward the mountains. Marcus's fluency in the local dialect allowed him to understand every word, and what he heard made his blood run cold. Mahmoud explained that his nephew had returned from the mountains with disturbing information. A large Taliban force, estimated at over 200 fighters, had established positions in the caves overlooking the village. They possessed heavy weapons, including rocket-propelled grenades and mortars. The attack was planned for dawn, when the American medical team would be most vulnerable. Marcus felt his heart rate quicken as the implications became clear. His SEAL team consisted of only 8 operators, while the medical unit had minimal security. The nearest coalition base was 40 minutes away by helicopter, and requesting immediate extraction would likely trigger the attack prematurely. Sarah had finally found a quiet corner behind the supply tent where she could rest. The thin sleeping bag provided little comfort against the rocky ground, but exhaustion overtook her reservations. Her medical bag remained within arm's reach, a habit developed through months of emergency calls at all hours. As Sarah drifted into a deep sleep, she dreamed of her hometown in California. The peaceful images of her childhood home contrasted sharply with the harsh reality surrounding her. In her dreams, she walked through her mother's garden, smelling the roses and feeling the warm sunshine on her face. Marcus gathered his team for an urgent briefing inside their makeshift command post. The 8 SEALs, each carrying years of combat experience, listened intently as their chief outlined the dire situation. Petty Officer Jackson, the team's explosive expert, suggested they could rig improvised charges to slow the enemy advance. Petty Officer Williams, their sniper, identified several defensive positions that could provide overlapping fields of fire. The team quickly developed a plan that would maximize their limited resources. They would establish defensive positions around the medical compound while simultaneously coordinating with nearby coalition forces. However, they knew their primary advantage lay in surprise and precise timing. Marcus assigned Petty Officer Thompson and Petty Officer Davis to secure the medical personnel and prepare them for potential evacuation. The remaining team members would establish overwatch positions in the surrounding buildings. Each man understood the gravity of the situation and the slim odds they faced. As the afternoon progressed, Marcus noticed subtle changes in the village atmosphere. Families began moving their livestock to safer locations, and several shops closed earlier than usual. The local Afghan National Army soldiers seemed more nervous, frequently checking their weapons and scanning the mountainous horizon. Sarah continued sleeping, unaware of the danger developing around her. The medical staff went about their duties, treating patients and maintaining their equipment. Dr. Harrison, the senior medical officer, reviewed patient charts while planning the next day's operations. He had no idea that dawn might bring a fierce battle instead of routine medical procedures. Marcus positioned himself where he could observe both the medical compound and the mountain approaches. His experienced eyes caught movement in the distant tree line, confirming Mahmud's intelligence. The enemy was already moving into position, likely planning to attack during the pre-dawn hours when visibility was limited. The SEAL chief made the difficult decision to maintain operational security by not immediately alerting the medical team. Premature panic could compromise their defensive preparations and potentially trigger the attack early. However, he knew that timing would be critical in the hours ahead. Petty Officer Wilson, the team's communications specialist, established contact with the nearest coalition base. The response was disappointing but not unexpected. No immediate reinforcements were available, and air support would require at least 30 minutes to arrive. The SEAL team would need to hold their ground using only their training, equipment, and determination. As evening approached, Marcus conducted a final reconnaissance of the area. He identified 3 likely attack routes and positioned his men accordingly. The SEALs used their night vision equipment to establish observation posts that would provide early warning of enemy movement. The village grew quiet as darkness fell, but Marcus knew this calm was deceptive. In a few hours, the peaceful medical compound could become a battlefield. He thought about Sarah sleeping peacefully in her corner, unaware that her life hung in the balance. The seasoned warrior had seen too much combat to believe in coincidence, and he sensed that this night would test everyone's limits. Marcus checked his watch and noted the time. 2200 hours. Intelligence suggested the attack would come between 0400 and 0500 hours, giving his team roughly 6 hours to prepare. He moved silently through the compound, ensuring each SEAL understood their responsibilities and fields of fire. The mountain winds carried sounds that made Marcus's skin crawl. Distant voices speaking in Pashto, the metallic clicking of weapons being prepared, and the subtle sounds of large numbers of men moving through difficult terrain. The enemy was confident, probably believing they would achieve complete surprise against the lightly defended medical facility. Sarah shifted in her sleep, her subconscious mind registering some disturbance in the normal night sounds. However, her exhausted body refused to wake up, desperately needing rest after the demanding day. Her steady breathing continued as she remained oblivious to the danger gathering in the darkness around her. Marcus made his final decision about when to wake the medical team. He would wait until the last possible moment to maintain their rest while ensuring they had enough time to prepare. The next few hours would determine whether courage and skill could overcome overwhelming odds in this remote corner of Afghanistan. At 347 hours, Marcus felt the familiar tension that preceded combat. His internal clock, honed by years of special operations, told him the attack was imminent. The mountain sounds had shifted from preparation to actual movement, and his night vision scope revealed dark shapes descending toward the village. Petty Officer Williams, positioned on the roof of a nearby building, confirmed the chief's assessment through hand signals. At least 50 enemy fighters were approaching from the North Ridge, while another group moved along the eastern valley. The Taliban had chosen their timing well, striking during the darkest hour before dawn when defenders would be least alert. Marcus made his way quietly to where Sarah lay sleeping. Her peaceful expression reminded him of his own daughter back home, and for a moment he hesitated. Waking her meant shattering the illusion of safety and thrusting her into a life-threatening situation. However, her medical skills might prove crucial in the coming fight. He knelt beside her and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Sarah's eyes opened immediately, her medical training having conditioned her to wake quickly when needed. She looked up into Marcus's intense gaze and instantly knew something was seriously wrong. Sarah sat up quickly, her mind immediately sharp despite having been in deep sleep moments before. She noticed Marcus was wearing full combat gear and carrying his rifle. The expression on his face told her everything she needed to know about their situation. Marcus spoke in a low, urgent whisper that carried absolute authority. He explained that a large enemy force was approaching the village and would likely attack within minutes. The medical team needed to prepare for casualties while also being ready for immediate evacuation if the defensive position became untenable. Sarah's military training took over as she processed the information. She quickly gathered her medical supplies and began organizing triage areas within the compound. Her hands moved efficiently as she prepared surgical kits, blood supplies, and emergency medications. Fear existed but remained controlled, channeled into productive preparation. Dr. Harrison and the other medical personnel woke as Sarah moved through the tent. Marcus briefed them quickly while his team took defensive positions. The medical staff understood their dual role: provide care for wounded while remaining ready to evacuate at a moment's notice. The first enemy mortar round impacted 200 meters from the medical compound, its explosion shattering the pre-dawn quiet. Marcus felt a cold satisfaction knowing his timing had been perfect. Any earlier and the medical team would have endured hours of anxiety. Any later and they might have been caught completely unprepared. Sarah instinctively ducked as debris rained down from the mortar impact. Her medical training included battlefield experience, but this level of direct threat was new to her. She forced herself to focus on her responsibilities, knowing wounded people would soon need her skills. Petty Officer Jackson's improvised explosive charges detonated along the northern approach, disrupting the enemy's advance and buying precious time. The explosions illuminated dozens of Taliban fighters who had been moving under cover of darkness. Marcus felt grim satisfaction seeing their surprise attack had become a deadly trap. The SEAL team's disciplined fire began picking off enemy fighters with devastating precision. Years of training and combat experience showed as each shot found its target. However, Marcus knew they faced overwhelming numbers and could not sustain this level of engagement for long. Sarah organized her medical area with calm efficiency despite the gunfire erupting around the compound. She positioned supplies for quick access and identified the safest areas for treating wounded. Her movements showed no panic, only professional competence under extreme pressure. The Taliban fighters quickly adapted to the unexpected resistance, spreading out and using available cover more effectively. Their return fire intensified, forcing the SEAL defenders to adjust their positions. Bullets cracked overhead as the enemy began coordinated assaults on multiple flanks. Marcus coordinated his team's defensive fire while maintaining communication with coalition forces. Air support remained 20 minutes away, an eternity in this type of close-quarters combat. The SEAL chief knew they needed to hold their positions long enough for help to arrive. The first wounded coalition soldier arrived at Sarah's medical station, carried by Petty Officer Davis. The young Afghan National Army soldier had taken shrapnel in his leg and was losing blood rapidly. Sarah immediately went to work, her hands steady as she controlled the bleeding and stabilized his condition. More explosions rocked the compound as the enemy brought their heavier weapons into action. A rocket-propelled grenade impacted near the main medical tent, shredding the canvas and sending equipment flying. Sarah continued working on her patient despite the destruction around her, embodying the medical corps motto of caring for others regardless of personal risk. Marcus realized the defensive perimeter was beginning to contract under enemy pressure. His SEALs were fighting magnificently, but ammunition was running low, and the enemy continued pressing their numerical advantage. He began considering fallback positions while hoping air support would arrive soon. Sarah moved her first stabilized patient to a safer location and prepared for the next casualty. She could see Marcus through the tent opening, calmly directing his team's fire despite bullets snapping past his position. His leadership under pressure impressed her and gave her confidence that they might survive this ordeal. The sound of approaching helicopters brought hope to the defenders, but Marcus knew the enemy would intensify their attack before air support could intervene. The next few minutes would determine whether his team could hold their positions long enough for rescue to arrive. Petty Officer Williams reported multiple enemy fighters attempting to flank their position from the west. Marcus quickly repositioned 2 of his men to cover this new threat while maintaining fire on the primary assault routes. The SEAL team's tactical flexibility was being tested to its limits. Sarah treated her second casualty, a village elder who had been struck by bullet fragments while helping evacuate civilians. Her medical supplies were holding up well, but she knew a prolonged battle would strain her resources. She began prioritizing treatments and conserving critical supplies. The Taliban fighters launched a coordinated assault on 3 sides simultaneously, forcing Marcus to make difficult decisions about where to concentrate his limited firepower. His team's superior training and equipment provided advantages, but the enemy's persistence and numbers were beginning to tell. Sarah could hear the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors growing louder, bringing the promise of evacuation and reinforcement. However, she also noticed that enemy fire was intensifying as the attackers realized their window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Marcus received word that the incoming helicopters carried both medical evacuation capability and additional special operations forces. His team needed to hold for just 8 more minutes, but those minutes would feel like hours under the current level of enemy pressure. The medical compound shook under another mortar barrage, but the SEAL team's defensive positions remained intact. Marcus felt proud of his men's performance under impossible odds, while knowing the most dangerous moments still lay ahead as the enemy made their final desperate push before air support arrived. The thunderous roar of Apache attack helicopters filled the dawn sky as they began their devastating assault on enemy positions. Marcus watched with professional appreciation as the pilots methodically destroyed Taliban strongholds with precise missile strikes. The tide of battle was finally turning in their favor. Sarah continued treating wounded soldiers and civilians while the air support eliminated remaining enemy resistance. Her medical station had become a crucial lifeline during the battle, and she felt deep satisfaction knowing her skills had made a difference. 3 soldiers and 2 villagers owed their lives to her steady hands and quick thinking. The Taliban fighters began retreating toward the mountains as the overwhelming firepower of the helicopters made their position untenable. However, several groups remained pinned down and continued fighting desperately. Marcus knew these final moments could still prove dangerous if wounded enemies chose to fight to the death. Petty Officer Jackson reported that enemy mortar fire had ceased completely, suggesting their heavy weapons positions had been neutralized. The SEAL team maintained their defensive positions while air support methodically cleared the surrounding area. Victory was within reach, but Marcus's experience taught him to remain vigilant until the threat was completely eliminated. Sarah's medical supplies were running low after treating 7 casualties, but the arrival of additional medical personnel via helicopter would soon provide relief. She organized her remaining equipment efficiently while preparing to brief the incoming medical team on patient conditions and required treatments. The first evacuation helicopter landed in the secured compound, its crew moving quickly to load the most seriously wounded patients. Sarah coordinated the transfer process, ensuring each patient's medical information accompanied them to the field hospital. Her professional competence under extreme pressure had impressed everyone who witnessed it. Marcus conducted a tactical assessment of his team's performance during the engagement. Despite facing overwhelming odds, the SEALs had suffered no serious casualties while inflicting heavy losses on enemy forces. Their disciplined fire, tactical positioning, and teamwork had proven decisive in holding the compound until air support arrived. The village elder Mahmoud approached Marcus with tears in his eyes, expressing gratitude for saving his community from Taliban reprisals. The old man explained that enemy forces had planned to execute anyone suspected of cooperating with coalition forces. The timely defense had prevented a potential massacre. Sarah began organizing her medical equipment for transport back to the main base. The temporary field clinic would be relocated to a more secure facility following this attack. She felt mixed emotions about leaving the village where she had made such a positive impact on local healthcare. Additional special operations forces arrived via helicopter to secure the area and conduct cleanup operations. Marcus briefed the incoming team commander on tactical details while his own men prepared for extraction. The successful defense would become a textbook example of small unit tactics against superior numbers. Dr. Harrison commended Sarah for her exceptional performance under combat conditions, noting that her calm leadership had prevented panic among the medical staff. Her actions during the battle would result in recommendations for commendation and possible promotion. She had proven herself worthy of the Navy's highest traditions. Marcus found a quiet moment to speak privately with Sarah before their evacuation. He expressed his admiration for her courage and professionalism during the crisis. Few people could maintain such composure while treating casualties under direct enemy fire, and her dedication had inspired his entire team. Sarah thanked Marcus for his timely warning and the protection his team had provided throughout the battle. She understood that without the SEALs' expertise and sacrifice, the medical compound would have been overrun with catastrophic casualties. Their mutual respect had been forged under the most demanding circumstances possible. The final helicopter prepared for departure as the last equipment was loaded aboard. Marcus took one last look at the village that had tested his team's limits and proven their capabilities. The successful defense would be remembered as a prime example of what determined professionals could accomplish against overwhelming odds. Sarah secured her medical bag and prepared for the flight to the main base. The experience had changed her perspective on military service and deepened her commitment to helping others. She knew the memories of this battle would stay with her throughout her career, serving as a reminder of how much difference one person could make. The helicopter lifted off, carrying the medical team and SEAL operators away from the village they had successfully defended. Below them, Afghan National Army soldiers and coalition forces continued securing the area and caring for civilians. The immediate threat had passed, but the larger mission of bringing stability to the region continued. Marcus reflected on the night's events as the helicopter flew toward safety. The successful defense had required split-second timing, perfect coordination, and unwavering courage from everyone involved. Sarah's medical expertise had been just as crucial as his team's tactical skills in achieving victory. Sarah watched the village disappear beneath them, thinking about the lives they had saved and the relationships they had built with the local population. The temporary field clinic had provided vital healthcare services while demonstrating American commitment to helping Afghan civilians. Her work there had embodied the best traditions of military medical service. The debriefing sessions following their return would analyze every aspect of the engagement, seeking lessons that could benefit future operations. Marcus knew his team's performance would be studied and their tactics incorporated into training programs. The successful defense had added another chapter to SEAL operational history. Sarah's written report would detail the medical challenges faced during combat operations and recommend improvements in battlefield casualty care. Her first-hand experience treating wounded under fire provided valuable insights for military medical training. The lessons learned would help save lives in future conflicts. The bond forged between Marcus and Sarah during those critical hours would endure long after their paths diverged. Both had witnessed the other's courage under extreme pressure and developed lasting mutual respect. Their partnership had proven that different military specialties could work together seamlessly when lives depended on it. Marcus's team received recognition for their outstanding performance during the engagement, with several members recommended for combat awards. Their successful defense against overwhelming odds had upheld the SEAL tradition of accomplishing impossible missions through superior training, tactics, and determination. Sarah returned to her duties at the main medical facility with enhanced confidence and deeper understanding of combat medicine. The experience had tested her limits and proven her capabilities under the most demanding conditions possible. She would carry the lessons learned into future deployments and training responsibilities. The village remained secure following the Taliban's failed attack, allowing humanitarian operations to continue without interruption. Local residents expressed gratitude for the protection provided by American forces and renewed their cooperation with coalition efforts to bring stability to the region. The successful defense became a model for integrated operations between special forces and medical units. Marcus's decision to wake Sarah at the crucial moment had changed the entire dynamic of the engagement, demonstrating how leadership decisions could determine mission success or failure. Years later, both Marcus and Sarah would look back on that night as a defining moment in their military careers. The crisis had revealed their true character and capabilities while forging a partnership that embodied the best traditions of American military service. Their courage and professionalism had made all the difference when it mattered most.